But he talked about how it's just like central to all New Zealand writing is the idea of youth and coming of age. We've just made so many good movies for adults with children at the centre. So in America, when kids are like getting chucked on the Disney Channel and stuff, we're like, wear this bonnet and like reconcile with our colonial past. You are 9, you know.
Talofa lava, I'm Madeline Chapman, editor of The Spin-Off. Welcome to Behind the Story, where I go behind the scenes of a big article on the spin-off from the week. If you want a weekly rundown of some of the best reads from the spin-off every Saturday, make sure you sign up to the weekend newsletter. Today I'm talking to senior writer Alex Casey about 2 tangentially related stories she wrote this week. The first, the small town cinemas holding on at the edge of the world, had Alex travel to Akaroa to speak to the people running a bustling local cinema and then go down a rabbit hole of South Island cinemas holding on to the movies as a third space. And the second, how does New Zealand produce so many successful child actors, is just a fun appreciation of our strangely high proportion of successful child actors and what makes it possible to succeed here at 11 years old. Here's Alex Casey on Behind the Story. Kia ora, Alex.
Kia ora, Mad.
You have been on the movie buzz this week with a couple of stories that have been on your list for quite a while. One has been lingering for a few weeks, and the other one I feel like has been in your brain for years. We'll start with the first one, which is about small town cinemas in New Zealand. What was the inspiration for that? You talked to a few, but was there one in particular that kind of made you go, oh, this is fascinating. I want to see what's out there for like the really small cinemas.
Well, I mean, I've always loved independent little cinemas. I worked at an independent cinema as in my early 20s as a projectionist, and it was just so romantic and fun, and I just loved everything about it. And I've always been quite interested in how, especially in the smaller ones, like not your big multiplex type places, but the smaller ones become almost like a third place for a lot of people, like especially older people. And yeah, so I've always thought about all those people that I used to see every day when I worked at the movies, and they had their little routines and stuff. And that's always something I've quite liked remembering about that job. And then this year, actually, I started a weekend writing course, and a really awesome lady at my course is Bridget, who runs the Ethel Cinema in Akaroa. So she was telling me about this life that she has, and I was like, oh God, that's such a great life. Like living in this tiny little Banks Peninsula, like beautiful town, and running this like humming little cinema. And then she's like, oh, we're actually selling it. And so I thought that's kind of a good way in, because she also said it was kind of an amazing story that they sort of turned it around, and it's pretty rare. They bought it in 2020 as well, and it's pretty rare that you'd have, you know, kind of a hospitality business that you've turned around post-COVID. So that was kind of what got me into it. So I drove out to Akaroa and I spent a few hours with them at their amazing little cinema, and it was, yeah, that exact same thing. It was that hub. It was a real community space. There were people of all kinds hanging out. It's also quite cool in Akaroa. It like shares the building with the local library. So you can kind of see a movie, grab a coffee, grab a library book, and just sit, and like you could spend a whole day there easily. And so, yeah, I had a really good chat with them. And then it just got me thinking about, I wanted to profile some more cinemas in the South Island too, just because I feel like, you know, it's quite an underrepresented market. And there's also really beautiful old historic cinemas here too. And it was also kind of a bit of a phone tree. So I would just ask in Akaroa, I was like, who else should I talk to? And they were like, oh, you got to talk to Pat and Geraldine. And then Geraldine was like, oh, if you want a community-led place, you got to talk to Hayley and Hokitika. So I just kept like ringing around and saying, Pat sent me. Yeah, and it kind of all came together in this quite nice story of, like the headline kind of says, how they're all kind of holding on at the literal edge of the world.
It's quite wholesome and kind of reminds everyone of this maybe what people thought was like a lost community gathering sort of element of our society, it also just reminded me of like, I feel like people are, what did they say? The children are yearning for the mines. People are yearning for those sort of local community spaces in a way that maybe we took for granted previously, and then all flocked online because we couldn't be bothered leaving the house. And now it's like suddenly realizing there is something in having those kind of like friendly, familiar strangers that you see around the place. And yeah, you don't really get that at a big multiplex, but certainly I can imagine those smaller cinemas, even the ones in Auckland, you do get regulars and you become familiar with the people behind the counter, and it honestly, it's just great for the soul.
Yeah, yeah. It really it was nice talking to in Akaroa, they're all digital there now, but they don't automate anything because they like to make sure everyone's in before they start the movie, and people often ring and say, I'm running late. Can you wait to start it for me? And I was just like, oh, that's just so nice. But yeah, it's also about, I think, just the communal experience of watching something in a room with people. Which is more and more rare. And that's what they all said. Like, yes, there's Netflix and all these different things. You can wait a couple months and watch it at home, but there's nothing like, watching a movie with a room full of people, and particularly strangers, and having that shared experience together. And it was interesting in Hokitika, like, that space isn't just used for the movies either. That's like where they put on their like end of year school plays and like fundraisers and all this stuff. So it really does become like functions kind of like a town hall, which I thought was, something I hadn't quite anticipated learning.
There is something about seeing a movie with other people. I feel like there are movies that I saw at the movies that I thought were so hilarious, and then I have watched again since and been like, oh, still funny, but I think hearing lots of other people laughing just makes you want to laugh more. And, I told you we went to see Wicked a couple of weeks ago, and it was a fairly full cinema of like quite intense Wicked fans. And it was just the most fun I've had at the movies in so long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not objectively an excellent movie. It's just, there was just something about seeing it massive with the surround sound and everybody just happy to be there, that it was kind of like, oh yeah, I'm glad I didn't watch this on the TV at home by myself on the couch.
Totally. I had the exact same experience with Wicked, and I'm still trying to untangle, did I like that, or did I just have a really nice time? I think that the actual text is separate to the experience, and I had such a good experience. And you're like looking around and you're like, why are all these adults just crying? You're like crying so much. And yeah, I think if I watched it at home, I would have just been really glum. And I think that's what Pat from Geraldine says. He's like, you watch a comedy at home and I mean, I don't think that many people like laugh out loud, but yeah, it's just quite an interesting thing, and it's definitely made me want to go to the movies more. But it is expensive. And that's something in the small towns as well. They do keep their prices down. I was looking in Geraldine; it's $14 to go to the movies if you're an adult. $5 popcorn, unbelievable.
That's pretty good, actually.
You just got to get to Geraldine.
I mean, that's it's a story about cinemas, but it's also a story about small towns and very kind of hyper-local reporting, which I feel like every time we publish something that has a sort of hyper-local element, that, again, on the surface, you go, oh, there's 600 people who live in this town, so maybe there's only 600 people who would find this super interesting, but it just becomes, people want to read about other places that aren't like where they live. And I think you in particular have really kind of relished the going and meeting quote unquote regular people in places that aren't, covered every day by the news, or where every second person is trained in some sort of PR or media training, so you get good interviews and stuff. How have you found basically starting to hone in on some of those local stories, even in places where you don't currently live?
Yeah. It's just really fun. It's like, because you just don't know what people are going to be like, and it's just the most amazing characters who are kind of like totally unfiltered and just have come from a totally different experience. And yeah, but like anything, when they're talking about something like the cinema, it's so tied to all these different things. There's the guy in Geraldine is talking about, apparently the provinces in New Zealand are like the highest offenders for illegal downloading. Like maybe, and perhaps it makes sense, the more remote you are, the less bothered you are about going to the movies. And then he also kind of talked about the farming sensibilities and how it's hard to like cut through with, potentially more, I don't want to say cosmopolitan taste, because but just getting movies to farmers is like an interesting idea. But yeah, I just really love it. And there's always so many interesting little nuggets that reveal themselves. Like the lady in Stewart Island, another incredible story where she and her husband made their own feature film to play on repeat for tourists about the island. And there's this real sense of people kind of just taking things into their own hands, because no one else is going to do it for them. And yeah, having a part in that place's history. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I love it. I love it. There is like a fear that you kind of come in as, swooping in like a media person from the big smoke. But I think since moving to Christchurch, I feel less from the big smoke. And also, I grew up in a small town, so I feel a little bit of kinship with those people.
Your second movie topic piece this week was about New Zealand's kind of shocking proportion of world-famous child actors, which I knew we had good child actors. Did not quite grasp until I saw your amazing, simple pie graph. Just how sort of known our child actors are in terms of like Oscar nominations, leading roles under the, when they're still teenagers, and also longevity. Was there anything, again, maybe I'll just get straight to the point, who do you think is our number one child actor?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked me this, because this is what I originally wanted to do, was rank them.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking that. I was like, we should have ordered them somehow.
Rank them by success, and then like measure different kinds of what success is to you. Is it, because there's all those like crummy fake net worth sites. Like we could rank them by fake net worth. But I think it's really hard between Anna Paquin and Melanie Linsky for me.
Mm-hmm.
Paquin has the Oscar. Like, that's pretty crazy. To have an Oscar when you're 11, but I think, and she has an Emmy as well, so that's halfway to an EGOT.
Yeah, that's true.
Linsky may have an Emmy, and Linsky also just has like impeccable taste, and I think has like, yeah, maybe slightly more, what's the word I want to say, critically acclaimed choices in her adult life. Oh, but then can you count Linsky? Like, she was 15. I was pretty fast and loose with my definition of a child. In the eyes of the law, is a child? Yeah, a child is 18 and under, right?
If they needed like a parent to sign something for them to be in the movie, then I would say that's a child.
Yeah. I don't know. Who do you think? Have I missed somebody? I think Thomasin McKenzie is on track.
I think she will be very. Yeah, I think she will be very soon. I would have almost put Keisha Castle Hughes higher, just for almost being surprisingly much more successful and around than you always think. Like when you were listing sort of like Game of Thrones. Now I'm not going to list anymore because I forgot. But there were other ones that I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, she's been on like a crime FBI kind of CSI show for about 4 seasons. But yeah, you probably can't recall them as quickly as you can, like, Melanie Linsky's bloody Yellow Jackets, Last of Us alone. It's like, That's the zeitgeist.
Yeah, that's true. She is the actor's actor. You did try to find out why we have such sort of successful child actors. And it is kind of basically that, like, there isn't as big a machine, essentially. And it does seem like the Film Commission loves to fund a child lead in a local film. That just seems to be the way for films to be successful here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not just the Film Commission funds it. I think that's the majority of what people write. Like, that's the only thing that's getting put in for funding. Like, there's a quote from Vincent Ward, who wrote Vigil, another film with a child at the centre. Actually, not to talk shit about her, but one of the only children that didn't go on to Hollywood. I think she has a lovely life, but she did not pursue acting. But he talked about how it's just like central to all New Zealand writing is the idea of youth and coming of age, and how that probably is why one of the points is just because we've just made so many good movies for adults with children at the centre. So in America, when kids are like getting chucked on the Disney Channel and stuff, we're like, wear this bonnet and like reconcile with our colonial past. You are 9,
Just to round it out, I would suggest everyone go and read both of these. Do you feel like there is not a child actor, but a child acting performance that stands out? Like, if you had to give an Oscar for Best Child Actor, no time, like no date restrictions. I know obviously someone has an Oscar, but who would you give it to?
To a New Zealand child?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to be in a film?
No.
Could it be in from an ad?
Oh my God. Sure.
The Oscar for Best Ad. Gosh, someone who hasn't got it already. I mean, I felt bad for not, like, James Rolliston, for not mentioning him, but he just hasn't quite had the international. It was about the Hollywood breakthrough. I mean, James Rolliston and Boy is pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. That was the first one that came to mind. I bet there's a kid in Lord of the Rings who says something in a really cool way. Actually, Liv Tennant has a line in Lord of the Rings as a child, and she is one of the only women that speaks. So maybe we give it to her for that groundbreaking representation.
Is she the one in the scene that is the only scene where two women talk to each other?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow, iconic.
I don't know. Who do you think? Have I missed somebody?
I mean, Keisha Castle Hughes, obviously, was incredible. But I actually thought, having rewatched Boy recently, everyone in it is incredible. I think the boy who played Rocky, the brother.
Oh, I haven't watched Boy in a long time.
Oh my God, he makes me cry. He is so good. And I think he was about 9 in it. Just incredible.
Yeah. Another one for the list. Well, there's still time, I will amend the story if these people want to break through. I can add them.
I did just realise we probably should have had like some sort of list, like watch list of just like, you want to see some emotional New Zealand acting?
Yeah.
Here's your watch list.
Holidays. But no, there's still time. And Paquin could win another Oscar. That was the other thing that was my alternate ending for the story, is I was like, we've stitched this up. There's still time for us to do like oldest. We could get like oldest. You got to knock Anthony Hopkins off. I mean, not physically, not literally, but he's currently the oldest Oscar winner.
Do you think Thomasin McKenzie will win an Oscar?
Yes. I think it's got to, right? In the next, I don't know. She's just so incredible.
I think she's a Saoirse Ronan. Got to happen in like the next 4 years.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, 5 years or so. Exceptional. And again, she came from Shortland Street. That was another thing. That was another big part of the article, was like, Shortland Street is giving that training ground to so many people. Frankie Adams, KJ Apa, frickin' what's his name? Toxic music video. Martin Henderson.
Did you claim Frankie Adams as a child actor? Was she a teen when she started on Shortland Street?
Yeah, Ulla, she was like 15, I think.
Yeah, she's great. Also, lots of actors who on Shortland Street people said that person can't act, and then now they're in Hollywood films and things like
Yeah.
that. I remember people saying that about Thomas and Mackenzie, and now look.
There you go. Yeah. No, it was just nice to do something. Like I kind of said in the intro, everything feels quite miserable at the moment for New Zealand as a whole. And it's like, there is this weird thing happening right now and always in popular culture where we are kind of dominating. Like, you know, Moana 2, Thomasin and Joy, and Julian Dennison's just in that new A24 comedy. So it was like, let's actually look into that and see, and maybe celebrate this thing that we're good at, because I don't know, are we good at rugby anymore? I don't think so.
Not really.
Damn it.
Well, on that controversial note, thank you very much, Alex Casey. That was Alex Casey on Behind the Story. I'll be back next week with another spin-off writer and another spin-off yarn. Thanks for listening.
Mm-hmm.